Kyler Murray is the shortest QB in the NFL at 5 foot 10 inches tall, but this never stopped him from winning the Heisman Trophy or winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Kyler Murray's ability to make defenders look silly in the backfield and then throw a dot on the run is unbelievable. Kyler is destroying the NFL, but people to this day still doubt Kyler's work ethic, and his height has always had someone doubting him. This all started when he was born on August 7, 1997, to Kevin Murray and his mother Misoon in Bedford, Texas. Kyler's dad, Kevin, was a multi-sport athlete who played baseball and football. He played quarterback at Texas A&M while being drafted in the 11th round of the MLB draft. Kyler's uncle, Calvin Murray, played in the MLB. It was always destined for Kyler to become an athlete. Kyler's mom was of Korean descent. Kyler was always ultra-competitive in everything. He won elementary school championships in chess. Whatever he touched, he wanted to destroy everyone in it. He attended Allen High School, where he would never lose a high school football game. Kyler led his team to 3 straight state championship games and had a perfect 42-0 record as a starter. In 2014, he was named Gatorade Player of the Year. Kyler was also a 2-sport athlete who played baseball as well. Murray was the first ever to be named an Under Armour All-American in both football and baseball. This is how Kyler thought and shows how confident he is. He also told his godfather that he can do what Russell Wilson does. Russell had just come off a Super Bowl win and was just 5 feet 11 inches tall. After all, Kyler was rated a 5-star recruit coming out and committed to Texas A&M.
I'll be attending the University of Texas A&M.
This meant he'd stay in state and play at the same school his father did. Kyler decided he was going to play baseball and football in college. He wasn't going to start right away. He had to compete with sophomore quarterback Kyle Allen. Ultimately, Kyler was named the backup. The team lost 2 straight games in October, and Kyler was named the starter against South Carolina. In this game, Kyler threw for 223 yards and ran for an insane 156 yards with 2 total touchdowns. Doing this as a true freshman was remarkable. His second start wouldn't go as well against Auburn. In that game, he only threw for 105 passing yards and 3 interceptions. At the end of the season, Kyler decided to transfer to the University of Oklahoma. The NCAA rules at the time meant that Kyler had to sit out of the 2016 season. In 2017, he had to sit behind Baker Mayfield. This is now 3 seasons of Kyler barely playing football. Kyler was patient and waited his turn. During this time, he was also drafted to the MLB with the 9th overall selection by the Oakland A's. However, he decided he wanted to play football instead. The wait to play football would be all worth it once you see the 2018 campaign he put on. Kyler Murray threw for an insane 4,361 yards, 42 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. You can add his 1,001 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground to that as well. This kind of year awarded Kyler Murray the Heisman Trophy, making him the best college player in the country. Going into the NFL Combine, Murray would skip the on-field drills and just interview with teams. His measurables were going to be a big topic of discussion. His height is something that has always followed him throughout his career. He was measured at 5 feet 10 inches tall and 207 pounds. The average NFL QB is 6 foot 3 inches tall. Height as a quarterback is important to be able to see over the offensive lineman. Stephen A. Smith was worried about Kyler's height.
The fact that he is so short, I mean, he's electrifying. The speed is unreal. And he would be a nightmare running the football against anybody or whatever. But in the NFL, against grown men with the speed that is on the NFL level, not to mention the girth and the size and, you know, the hat they can put on you and durability being such a question mark. Don't get me wrong. He's not the biggest dude in the world, but I think it's kind and generous to say he's 5'9". He doesn't seem that way to me.
And said he wouldn't have drafted him number 1 overall pick. But the Arizona Cardinals held the number 1 overall pick and had recently hired Cliff Kingsbury as their head coach. Cliff and Kyler had a connection already. Cliff tried recruiting Murray to Texas Tech. Come draft time, it was basically a given that the Cardinals were going to select Murray with the first pick. The thing that made this pick very interesting was the fact that the Cardinals drafted Josh Rosen with the 10th overall pick the prior year. Selecting QBs in back-to-back years in the first round isn't something that happens. They believed in Kyler's talent enough to move off of Rosen. He wasn't going to a good situation. Their offensive line ranked dead last 32nd in the 2018 season. Heading into the preseason, Kyler didn't really play that much outside of one game. It was time for Kyler's first game against the Detroit Lions. In this game, Kyler and the Cardinals would find themselves down 24-6 in the fourth quarter. This comeback would start with a field goal to make it a two-possession game. Following that, Kyler would throw a 27-yard touchdown pass to running back David Johnson. The Cardinals defense would hold up and Kyler would have an opportunity at a game-tying drive down 8 points with a little over 2 minutes left to go. Then Kyler would lead them all the way down to a first and goal where he would throw a touchdown pass to Larry Fitzgerald. They were still down 2 and completed a 2-point conversion to tie it. Both teams would get field goals in overtime and the game would end in a tie. In Kyler's NFL debut, he threw for 308 yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. In week 2, Kyler threw for a second straight 300-plus yard game against Baltimore. Although this was another loss for them though. They get their first win in week 5 and proceed to win the next 2 after that. Ultimately, they would finish the season with 5 wins. Overall, Kyler threw for 3,722 yards, 20 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. We all know Kyler's a dual threat quarterback, and he added 544 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns there. This kind of rookie season led to Kyler winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year for the 2019 season. Heading into that offseason, the Cardinals were poised to help out their young quarterback. This is when they would completely fleece the Houston Texans for star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. In the 2020 NFL Draft, they would use their 8th overall selection to draft Isaiah Simmons. He was a versatile defensive player with freakish athletic ability. In week 1 of the 2020 season, Kyler and D-Hop would show the NFL world that they're the next best duo. In a 24-20 win over the 49ers, D-Hop caught 14 receptions for 151 yards. Kyler followed up this performance with 286 passing yards, 3 total touchdowns, and 54 yards on the ground against Washington. After starting 2-0, they would back down to earth, losing their next 2. The Cardinals would then go on to win 3 straight games, including an overtime thriller against Seattle. In this game, Kyler had 427 total yards with 4 touchdowns to just 1 interception. In week 10 against the Buffalo Bills, Kyler and the Cardinals found themselves down 4 with 8 seconds left in the game. This is where Kyler would roll down left and throw deep to Hopkins. This play is famously known as the Hail Murray. After this win, the Cardinals were 6-3. It looked like Kyler had turned around the worst team in football just 2 seasons prior. But in week 11 against the Seahawks, Kyler suffered an injury to his throwing shoulder. This injury didn't cause him to miss any time, but you can tell it was bothering him, as the Cardinals would finish 2-5 in their last 7 to miss the playoffs. Despite this, Kyler still had a great 2020 season. He threw for 3,971 yards, 26 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He added 819 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground. This kind of season gave him his first Pro Bowl appearance. In the 2021 offseason, the Cardinals added J.J. Watt, a big-time defensive player. They also added protection for Kyler Murray by trading for Pro Bowl center Rodney Hudson. They start the season off winning at Tennessee. Then in week 2, Kyler threw for an impressive 400 yards. Kyler led the Cardinals to a 7-0 start. Everything was going well till it didn't. Kyler had suffered an ankle sprain in week 8 and missed the next 3 games. They still finished 11-6 and be the 5th seed. They had a wild card matchup against the Rams. This 2021 Rams defense was loaded with talent. They had Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and Jalen Ramsey. Kyler and the Cardinals didn't stand a chance, losing 34-11. Kyler still had a pretty good season and was selected to his 2nd Pro Bowl. Heading into the 2022 offseason, questions arose about Kyler's leadership and dedication to football. It was time for Kyler's big contract extension. Before that, the Cardinals added Hollywood Brown from the Ravens, reuniting Brown and Murray where they dominated college ball together at Oklahoma. It's worth noting that star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins would miss the first 6 games of the 2022 season due to a suspension. Back to the contract extension, Kyler signed a massive 5-year contract worth $230 million. There was a clause in the contract that stated he had to watch game film 4 hours per week. Kyler went off on his critics with this press conference.
I'm already behind the 8 ball, and I can't afford to take any shortcuts, no pun intended.
But this did not stop the video game memes from circling around Kyler. The Call of Duty jokes still run rampant with him. Going into the 2022 season, Kyler suffered a wrist injury in practice. This didn't cause him to miss any time. The start of the season didn't look too bad, going 2-2 in their first 4. Kyler even suffered a hamstring injury in week 8, which caused him to miss the next 2 games. Tragedy would occur in week 14, when Kyler scrambled for a few yards. He fell in immense pain. Unfortunately, it was an ACL tear that would cause him to miss the rest of the season and most of the 2023 season too. In 11 games played in 2022, he finished with 17 total touchdowns to 7 interceptions. A disappointing season for the Cardinals caused them to fire head coach Cliff Kingsbury. Jonathan Gannon, a defensive coordinator from the Eagles, was hired to become their new head coach. To make this worse, they even cut DeAndre Hopkins. In the draft, they brought in offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr. By the time Kyler made his return in Week 10, the Cardinals had a record of 1-8. In his first game back after the big injury, Kyler helped the Cardinals to win over the Falcons. In total, he went 3-5 as a starter that year. He made the Cardinals look respectable. In 2023, he threw for 1,799 yards, 10 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Since the Cardinals finished with such a bad record, they had the 4th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. This is where they selected superstar receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. This is the son of Hall of Fame receiver Marvin Harrison. To start the 2024 season, Kyler has been playing relatively well. However, the Cardinals are struggling to get wins. Kyler and Harrison are off to a good start though. We'll see how the season plays out. Until next time, subscribe for more of the best football content on YouTube.